So this amuses me slightly because the Sun go with it in a big splash on page 2. Suella Braverman, Home Secretary, on a migrants' call, quotes, "Enough talk, we must stop boats," with a talk, no pun intended, of new laws to block illegals. Her choice of language there. The political pressure on the government, and particularly her, to get this done is massive. All the focus groups, all the opinion polls.
Absolutely huge political pressure, and I think, interestingly, perhaps what's heaped even more pressure on Rishi Sunak to sort this small boats crisis is the fact that Keir Starmer seems to be pretty much sweeping the issue under the rug. I was at his speech yesterday where he laid out his 5 plans to what he would do in government if Labour get in at the next election, and small boats wasn't on there, which was very interesting, and we had Sun journalists and Mail journalists asking questions about that. So
The Mail were asking.
The Mail were asking, yeah.
Interesting. Well, you know, because we were talking about this before we came in, but I just hold that up. That's the front page of the Mail that Olivia is referring to there, and that brings the Prime Minister into the discussion, whereas the Sun is just quoting the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Rishi quotes, "Make no mistake, I'll deport Channel migrants."
Yes, and he sees this as a big area of differentiation between himself and Keir Starmer. That's what MPs are saying. That's what they want him to address. That's an easy way to get his backbenchers on side because, as you say, focus group after focus group shows that this is something that people really care about. And this piece of legislation, which Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak have cooked up, which is going to be put forward on Tuesday, will essentially mean that all asylum seekers who come via small boats, their claims simply won't be considered. They'll be sent back to Rwanda or another safe third country. So it gets around the modern slavery legislation, which we know has essentially acted as a blockade in the immigration process. So you've got people who have come here claiming modern slavery under current law. It's almost impossible to question that claim of modern slavery until they've been held in a waiting area in hotels, etc. And the average time for them to be held there is 424 days, which just shows the extent to which this is blocking up the immigration process for other people who want to come by a legal route.
Blue water again, as our mutual friend Mr. Portillo used to refer to. You mentioned the Starmer speech yesterday, but he and his would-be Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, come in for renewed hostility in the newspapers today. Dan Hodges, who has no time for Keir Starmer and is a former Labour person, is particularly brutal. The other one that caught my attention was Camilla Long in the Sunday Times, who said that this episode proves that Sir Keir Starmer is not the Messiah, he's just a silly boy.
Yes, and actually...
A bit naughty, but quite clever and quite fun.
Clever, absolutely. So the same point, actually, that our People's Panel were picking up on this morning, quite possible that Sue Gray wouldn't dream of letting her political opinions interfere with her work in the civil service, but the optics of it are just so bad, and it gives fuel to the fire of someone like Boris Johnson, who says that Sue Gray can't be trusted and her report can't be trusted. So it is beginning to look as though that was a bit of an own goal for Keir Starmer, and if you thought that this would somehow disappear from the headlines or not be picked up on, it does feel as though it's had more political cut-through, as they say, than you might expect.
Sure. Also not going away, and this is the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, that even give it a kind of headline flash there, the lockdown files, they refer to it. And this quite extraordinary thing. I mean, I find it slightly offensive and ridiculous that government and policy seem to be conducted via WhatsApp for so long. But for a very senior member of that government, the Health Secretary himself, to talk about frightening the pants off the public by telling them, you better abide by all of the rules, or this new variant in Kent is going to come up and do for you and do for us all. I mean, the language is childish and pathetic. The politics, demeaning. The
politics is very demeaning, and I think what I found most shocking about that is the episode where Matt Hancock talks about when they're going to release the new variant. So essentially, the news that there was a new variant was being kept from us until the moment of most political expediency for Matt Hancock, and he wanted to pick his time when he felt that people were getting complacent to release this news that a new variant was here. And it does feel a little bit as though the people were kind of played as children almost over this whole lockdown period. So I think these stories are going to keep on coming, and it's going to heap pressure on that COVID inquiry, which many people have said shouldn't be dragged out for as long as
Interesting, going back to the Labour-Tory thing, we heard just in the news bulletin there that Labour's former Shadow Health Secretary saying that this draws a line under Hancock's political career, which I rather thought had been drawn anyway. But it also emerged from these leaks that he thought COVID was going to relaunch his political career, and was told by close friends that this would project him right up to the very, very top, presumably either leader or Chancellor of the Exchequer or Home Secretary. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth.
Absolutely, and it was quite alarming seeing that right at the beginning of that pandemic, when you think the Health Secretary might have some other things to think about, he was talking to this close friend about how the crisis might help to propel him up to greater heights. Quite an alarming thing to see, really. So I think it's easy, with all of these comments coming out at the same time, it's easy to sort of forget the overwhelming weight of them, really. But it is, as the former Shadow Health Secretary said, it very much draws a line under Matt Hancock's political career. Am
I being a bit puritanical, or do you, I hope, agree with me, perhaps, that this whole episode has slightly damaged the perception of how we do politics in this country?
I think it definitely has, and I think the politics by WhatsApp must be consigned to the history books soon.